Hello and welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland review show, which we don't normally do during the week, but we just wanted to do it. There's absolutely no script for today, so we're just going to be waxing lyrical about what I think was arguably probably the best win of the season in terms of atmosphere, the team that we beat, and the performance that the lads put on. But I've cobbled together some guests. First and foremost, we've got Sunderland Echoes, James Copley. James, how are you, mate? You okay?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. It's nice that you've cobbled together the B list of guests. So yeah, pleasure to fill in.
I'm pleased that you've upgraded both of yourselves to B list. I was thinking more D list, but it is what it is. Dave, you normally join after a horrendous defeat, but you've joined us after a lovely, lovely win over Leeds. How are you, sir?
Indeed, yeah, hard not to be optimistic after that last night. Like you say, it definitely came across on the TV like there was a cracking atmosphere, and yeah, good start to the Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, excellent start to Wednesday. I think everything's coming up Millhouse, honestly. Like them lot up the road getting whacked every game. We winning games. Doddsy turning into Tuchel. I don't know what's going on. But I'll come to you first, properly. Obviously, you were there last night in the midst of it. Great atmosphere, great win. But how are you feeling sort of 10 o'clock AM on Wednesday morning after the result?
I'm feeling brilliant, to be honest. I thought was the best performance of the season so far. When the team news came out at 7 o'clock, I think myself, like a lot of fans, were curious. Was Sealed going to go into midfield? But Mike Dodds went five at the back, which was really interesting tactically, and it worked. It was a brilliant call. I don't think Tony Mowbray would have done that. So fair play to Mike Dodds for sort of sticking his neck on the chopping board. But then the really interesting thing was that Sunderland scored when Mike Dodds changed it. He brought Ekwah on for Sealed. He went four at the back. Jack Clark's shift defensively was magnificent. So there was a bit of cover on the left-hand side. And then Job gets the goal. It was really interesting tactically. I found it a fascinating game to watch, considering it was 0-0 for the majority of the game. It was tactically fascinating. I thought the quality on show from both sides was excellent. Just a really good watch all round, especially when you've won the game. It was sort of devoid of any really, really bad refereeing decisions, which is always nice. I did find it interesting that Daniel Falk has said that Sunderland parked the bus. I don't think that was the case. I just think that he's sort of been out-tacticked a little bit by Mike Dodds, who was a relative novice in the management game, and I think he's probably a little bit miffed at that. But fair play to Mike Dodds for getting one over on a championship promotion winning manager previously, a Premier League manager previously, somebody who's seen as a good tactician. And he must be feeling pretty proud of himself because, let's go back to February 2022. Sunderland lost against Doncaster and then Cheltenham. That wasn't really his fault, the state of the club at the time, the situation he was parachuted into. I felt sorry for him at the time, but circumstances and social media meant that he became a bit of a joke figure unfairly, really, in certain quarters, and he was hammered. I think criticism's always fair, but he was taking the Michael out of a little bit, really, in some quarters, which I thought was distasteful. He's clearly very highly rated within the club. And he's righted the wrong. He's got 2 wins out of 2 against West Brom and Leeds United. Fair play to him. He comes across as a really nice, down-to-earth guy who just wants to work hard and do well for Sunderland. So, yeah, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the manager hunt, but fair play to Mike Dodds because that was a borderline tactical masterclass, I would suggest.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. For me, I think you're looking at the game itself was like Leeds reminded me of Sunderland and the Mowbray in a lot of ways, like in the sense that they had a lot of the ball, but didn't really do much with it, despite the quality that they obviously have. And I think a lot of that it does go down to Doddsy and like fair play. Tactically he's been spot on the past 2 games and he's switched things around. I thought we'll get on to which players impressed us most, but I think I was worried about Sealt wherever he played, if I'm honest with you, because he's not the fastest. He hasn't played that much, and I don't know much about him because of the lack of game time. And I thought, he was one of the standout players. But Dave, I'll come to you next. Obviously, we're all absolutely buzzing. My voice has gone a bit. I really enjoyed it last night, though. Like, I think, when you play Leeds, whatever you think, Leeds, they're a big team. It's always nice to play Leeds because it's always a big game, and it's nice to get one over them because, they are vocal, they are they are good fans, however you look at it. But it's always nice to get one over Leeds, and it's always nice to play them and beat them. But how did you feel about the game, Dave? Are you happy as Larry as me and James are?
Yeah, massively. I I'm exactly the same thought process that I just think we were the better team. Yeah, okay, their front four are dangerous, and then when you've got the likes of Bamford on the bench, you've got Notto on the bench, you've got some serious attacking options. Their run of form lately has been absolutely sensational, and yeah, it's quite for as much as you're giving their fans credit, and I think they're a huge club and they're very well backed. But some of the comments that I read last night about how we just sat 11 men behind the ball, I just don't know what game they were seeing. I think it was tactically brilliant. Dodds deserves all the credit because I was probably one of those who when we were getting beat 2-1 off Cheltenham was kind of going, what is this guy doing in the dugout? He is not ready for this. You can see it a mile off. And fair play to him, you can see the way that he's reacting to things on the sideline with the cameras last night. He's bought into the club. He's bought into the fans. We've always asked for an extension of ourselves as fans, whoever's in charge. And I sincerely hope whoever comes in as manager, I sincerely hope that he's there for every step of the journey. And I think the dynamic will work perfectly. He's young himself. Hopefully we get a young, talented manager, works alongside him, and he keeps delivering. The boys obviously love him. And yeah, so many standouts last night. It was unbelievable. I'll let you start everything off, but yeah, you could wax lyrical about so many of them. I think it was just a proper performance, wasn't it? Okay, maybe he's a little bit tentative in the first 15 minutes, but it's a bit like a boxing match, isn't it? Feel your way around each other, and then go hell for leather. And yeah, I just thought it was a very enjoyable watch. And as you'd said before, with Mowbray, there's every chance we get beat 1-0 last night. So absolutely huge credit to Dodds and to Proctor. They've put themselves in the firing line. Probably could have easily shied away from it, and they haven't. And 6 points from 6 when we've just sacked our manager. It's pretty impressive, to be fair.
Especially considering who it came against. And I think, by the way, the more this is going on, this is getting less of a podcast and more of a Dodcast. But there's the title for the show. Thank you very much, Graham. Well done. Pat yourself on the back. Dave, I'm going to stick with you for the moment and then move on to Copley, because you're on here every week, so you get first pick here, right? We've decided that we're going to pick one player every single week that we want to mention. And if you pick that person, the next person can't pick that person. I'm going to take the choice away from me, take the choice away from the debutant, and let you choose the player that impressed you most last night, Dave, and why.
Oh, mate, it's so tough, and I won't mention the other name because I'm sure you're going to bring them up. But I do, and he's had a bit of criticism rather this season. But the one, and I've loved him probably since 3 months of being here. So I'm going to go try Hume. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. And I'm not saying he was the best out of everyone on there, but for me, I just love watching him play football. He's mature. He's phenomenal. I think it was Northern Ireland who tweeted during the international break, what a player we've got in our hands. We said it at the end of last season. He will become a Premier League footballer. He will be there. He reminds me of like a Seamus Coleman. He's just absolutely fantastic. And so, yeah, for that reason, I'm giving it to Hume. I think his reading of the game sensational,
Our Republic of Ireland listeners won't like that comparison. Well done, Dave. That's a few subscribers lost. But there is one player I want to pick out. But before I do, I'll let the debutant have the second choice. Copley, who stood out for you?
Yeah, I agree with everything Dave said on Trey Hume. He would have been up there as one of my first picks. I thought the goal line clearance was commendable, and I've never seen a player as good in a tackle as him. His time and his tenacity, it's just brilliant. I genuinely can't think of a fullback who was tackled better at Sunderland, like maybe Bardsley or Macon maybe, but like, yeah, Trey Hume's sensational. The player, there's two, and I'm gonna struggle to pick. But I'm going to go with Dan Neil. He got our Sunderland Net Goal Man of the Match for the game, which was actually picked by Phil Smith. But I did agree with. I just think he's a very, very good footballer. He's 22 years old, playing every game for Sunderland, usually in a midfield two in the Championship. I just thought he was all over last night. Sometimes he can get caught in the blind side and lose the ball, but you expect that from a young player. I think he's developing in front of our eyes. I think his energy, his work rate, his passing, his passion for the club is brilliant. And I think it's sad, really, that there's a few fans that really don't rate Dan Neil and seem to have it in for him. I think it's obviously fine to critique Dan Neil when things don't go his way and stuff. But it's that thing that football clubs and football fans have about hammering the own. It happened with Jordan Henderson before his massive heel turn and move to Saudi Arabia when he was actually a Sunderland player. He did get hammered a little bit, and I've seen it over the years with various different people, Elliot Embleton as well, a little bit. And it does happen with Dan. And I don't really understand why, because I think his performances largely have been absolutely fantastic. Unlucky with a red card against Middlesbrough. For dissent, obviously Sunderland received an apology for that, but I think by and large this season he's been one of Sunderland's standout performers. And if he hadn't come up through the youth academy, had we bought him last summer, I think everybody would be raving about him. I think he's absolutely fantastic and a credit, and he's developing into a leader as well. 126 games he's got for Sunderland, and he's only 22. Hasn't missed a game in the Championship this season, I don't think. I think he only missed 3 last season. Played in the League One season when we got promoted. I think he's a real asset to the club, and I think he deserves a little bit more love than he gets on social media at times.
I absolutely agree with Dan Neil. I turned the lad next to me, and I'm one of Dan Neil's probably harshest critics, but not in the sense that I don't think he's got quality. I know how good he can be. So like last season when he was turning and losing the ball a bit, it was frustrating me. However, like the lad next to me kind of felt like he couldn't progress the way I felt he could progress. And we discussed it last night, and I went, look, you changed your mind on Dan Neil, he's class, isn't he? And he went, yeah, you know what, mate? Yeah, he's unreal. Like his passing ability, his leadership on the park. And I completely agree. I think if you'd signed him last summer, you'd be like, oh my God, what's this kid? Where have we got him from? He's such a leader in the park, and he's not making those silly mistakes he made last year. And I think, if he had made them once or twice, I think you could probably go, well, it's only second season in the second tier, but like the fact that he's stopped making them so much, I mean, touch wood, he'll probably make one on Saturday. I know I've said this, but I think you can see he's just maturing game by game and getting better. And for me, he's one of the first names on the team sheet. But when we talk about people being critiqued, we've done it on this show. Dave's done it in the past and then swung around. And then he's someone that I've always loved. But even I've said recently, I'm just not sure if he deserves his place at the minute. But I thought for me, he was far and wide man of the match last night. I think Luke O'Nien was absolutely phenomenal. It was just everything you want from Luke O'Nien in terms of the composure at the back, the leadership from the back, getting in the way shots, blocking things, organising his defence. Excellent alongside Ballard. We've touched on Seal too. I thought had a fantastic performance till he went off injured, and even the little cheeky wink and the smile towards the Roger end, as it's now called, sort of towards the end. It was Luke O'Nien at Luke O'Nien's best, and I think sometimes he gets absolutely destroyed. And like I feel like if we're going to destroy him when he has a poor performance, we really need to back him when he puts in a performance that he put in last night. And I think for me, with O'Nien, does he have limitations? 100%. Does he have limitations as a centre half? 100%. But for me, and me and Brad have said it countless times over the years, Luke O'Nien is the epitome of everything I've just wanted from a Sunderland player. Over the years, I've had, and I'm not saying anything different here, but when you've got the likes of Jack Rodwell, who's played at the club, and Didier and Dong, who quite frankly couldn't care less about the club, I can kind of almost deal with O'Nien's occasionally not great performances, because I know for a fact he's going to put in a performance last night as soon as I start to worry. And for me, he was just an absolute standout. But you could have literally picked anyone. Like we haven't even touched on Job, 18, playing a completely
Pritchard as well.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, Copley, I wanted to ask you about Job. We said about Dan Neil before. If we'd signed him last summer, would we rate him higher? And I sometimes think, Job has got the attention on him because of who his sibling is and how good his sibling is. But I also sometimes think like people aren't realizing how good this 18-year-old kid is that can play in about four different positions. And Doddsy spoke about him last night and said, like, look, they said, I think Sky said, what's his position? He said he's 18. Like, he's got
Yeah, yeah.
so much ability. He can play where he wants, sort of like, let's not pigeonhole him just yet. But he was up front as an out and out striker on Saturday. Look, he did score. We'll talk about the offside decision. We know he scored. He scores again last night, but he played like deep holding midfield role for about 70 minutes. Like, I don't want to sell him off here, but how much of a talent is Job, James?
No, he's absolutely brilliant. Just firstly, quickly on Luke O'Nien, I think some of the discourse surrounding him annoys me as well because he picks up a yellow card, loses the ball, daft foul. He gets hammered on Twitter instantly. Oh, he's clueless. He's this. He's that. People really going in 2-footed. He plays the rest of the game on the yellow card, doesn't put a foot wrong, and nobody says a thing about it. I think some people just need to really check themselves when they're criticizing players and be balanced about it. Like as you said, Graham, sometimes he can do the odd stupid thing. I thought he was lucky maybe not to give a penalty away against West Brom. He didn't need to put himself in that position. But when he does something good, he needs to be praised. Be balanced about it. Critique the bad things, but praise the good things. But just on Joe Bellingham, I mean, Christ, what a player! He's 18. It's testament to him that he came to the club when he was 17. He's just turned 18, and he's one of the first names on the team sheet. And nobody bats an eyelid when he's put up front. Nobody bats an eyelid when the next game he drops back into centre midfield. Nobody bats an eyelid when in that same game against Leeds United, an ex-Premier League club who were right up there at the top of the table. It's changed tactically, and Job is the man that's moved out of position to go a little bit further forward and wins the game. It's just expected of him now, which will bring with it a different pressure. But you're right. I was thinking this last night, actually walking back from the game, like, what is the time frame for him going to a top European club? Because initially I thought 3 to 5 years he could be playing in the Champions League, and then I thought, well, actually it could be a lot sooner than that. Not that I want to sell him off. I want him to stay at Sunderland for 10 years and reach the dizzying heights of Europe with us. But you have to be realistic and say, given his pedigree, given his stature, you take his name out of it. He's a bloody good player, and Mike Dodds touched upon it last night that I think it's hard for him being in Jude Bellingham's shadow. Maybe that's perhaps the wrong word for it. But his brother's a superstar playing for Real Madrid and scoring, 13 goals, and it's only December, winning El Clasicos and setting the world alight. So it is going to be tough for a young lad. Obviously, his family are split. I think his mother's in Sunderland and his dad's in Spain, or is it the other way around? I think his dad's in Sunderland, his mother's in Spain. His dad's got the better end of the bargain in my view. But yeah, sky's the limit for him. And it's testament to him that when you hear him speak and when you see him play, you actually forget how young he is. The fact that he's only just turned 18, I think he's an absolute credit. And again, sky's the absolute limit. And when Sunderland have a problem tactically, he seems to be the one who can sort that out. So, I mean, the discipline to do that at his age is remarkable, really, and a massive coup for Sunderland to get him for as cheaply as they did. And there were Birmingham City fans that were almost celebrating the fact that he'd gone, thinking that they'd got a good deal for him, claiming that they had better youth players at the club, which they may well do. I'm not all fair with every young player at Birmingham City, but that does seem like a pretty grand claim now in hindsight.
1.5 million.
It's mad. It's mad.
Silly money. Dave, I want to stick with Job, right? Because I love him. That's the reason I want to stick with him, to be honest. But do you know what I really like about Job as well, Dave? And I think this is a big testament. We've seen it last year with Ahmad, a supremely talented player that we know is probably Premier League bound and European bound, and you sort of love him whilst it's here. And the biggest thing about Ahmad, I think the reason he became so popular with the fans was, yeah, he was brilliant on the pitch and he scored some ridiculous goals. But you sort of loved his passion for the club, which you seem to get immediately. For me, Job's in exactly the same mold. The celebration when he scored, like you can see he's looking around, and when we're singing Wise Men saying, when like players say stuff and you hear them and you go, aye, okay, yeah, you're just playing up to the fans and stuff here. He genuinely loves it here, and I think that gives him that extra 10% on the already like abundance of potential and talent he has. But how nice is it to see someone like Job, who's obviously aiming, will barring any mistakes, injuries, or anything like that, God forbid, he's going to reach the top. I've got no doubt about that. But how nice is it to see that, no matter what happens, you can tell he's always going to remember Sunderland and he's just bought into the club perfectly.
It's lovely, isn't it? But it's also that one where, without being stereotypical and using horrible cliches, where you end up going out with some superstar model and you just know that it's heartbreak. I think we've got 2 years, 2 years of maximum, and then he does the type of move. And I know he calls himself Job because he doesn't want to be in his brother's shadow, but he probably goes the same route. The only difference is the 2 years or the 18 months that Jude had at Birmingham. We're lucky that we're having Job here. Then I think he's off to a Dortmund, and then after that, wherever he wants to go. And that's heartbreak. However, the one thing that is brilliant is when you're paying someone, you want 110%. He gives you that for every single minute that he's here. I think he's gonna enjoy it. He realizes it's a great platform to play football, to put himself out there. He's employed by the club. He will give everything. And I just think it ends in heartbreak, unfortunately. But let's hope we have some good times before then. Well, we will have some good times before then. Last night alone. But yeah, I saw the clip the other day of him saying how much he loves the old Elvis song, and when we all start singing it, it's brilliant, isn't it? We've got so many players now who care. Which you mentioned our friend Mr. Rodwell. Name whichever one of the two of them you want, whether it's Jim or Jack. But we had so many chances like that for so long. It's now really nice to see the likes of Patrick Roberts, who's been off at Celtic, who's been off at City, playing Champions League football, tying themselves down to new contracts because they want to be here, because they realise we try to play football in the right way, because we've got a really good setup now. Yeah, it just makes you proud. It makes you really proud to be a Sunderland fan. And people like that, people like Job, Dan Neil, who's obviously from the area. But yeah, the amount of people that have bought into the football club and what we're trying to do, I think is testament to certain people upstairs and testament to the fans for sticking through really shit times, for want of a better phrase. So yeah, really proud. I think that's the summary from that.
One thing I do want to mention, Dave, as well, I think something that we haven't had the chance to speak about for a number of weeks, and I'm going to fire this one at you, Dave, because of a certain person that will want to be mentioned. A clean sheet. Lovely. What do you think of that?
Yeah. In games like that, it makes the difference. Well, it obviously makes a difference because we only scored one, so the clean sheet gets us the 3 points instead of one. Yeah, we all know we're talking about Bowers. We all know how much he loves a clean sheet, the boring bastard. But it is important in certain games. I think the Sky Sports commentators yesterday were talking about the Leicester game and how we went gung ho and tried to get in Leicester's faces, and it looked pretty. And no doubt that we are successful in a high press because we've got quite a fit, athletic team nowadays, plenty of youthful exuberance. But sometimes we do have to be a little bit wily, a little bit foxy, and for that we've been going that we need some experience in there. Well, we didn't have the experience last night in terms of age and in terms of being there, done that, got the T-shirt and so on. I mean, Jensen Sealed came in. He definitely hasn't got that many T-shirts. And yet still, and again, huge credit to Dodds and Proctor for setting them up that way during the course of the week. But we did look as though we had plenty of experience. I suppose Pritchard made a massive difference. He's always great off the ball with his work, even though he doesn't quite look fit enough. His positional sense and stuff is absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, massive credit to everyone involved, I think.
I think I really want to pull out Pritchard as well. Yeah, look, We talked about Pritchard for weeks and how he should be playing, and I think some people had the opinion that maybe coming off the bench he's good. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal last night until he went off for Brad Dack. I felt a bit sorry for Bradley Dack because when he came on, the whole crowd went. I can't remember who went off. I think it was Pritch actually. I think it was Pritch, but I could be wrong with this. But whoever went off got a real rapturous like applause, and then Dack came on. It was like, oh. And it wasn't a purposeful thing. People just went, "Oh no!" But I thought, for the 5 minutes he was on, he defended, he harried, he did the job, and um, hopefully Bradley Dack does improve because we do need to see more, but less of the negatives on this one. Um, we talked about the comments that Daniel Farker, who's got a really funny way of like a funny accent and the way that he speaks, it always makes me laugh. Sounds like he's having like helium. Um, in terms of him saying we parked the bus, I think we all collectively disagree with that because I mean you look at the chances that we're in the game, if that's ends 0-0, you're frustrated. But I think there was a Leeds fan online, funnily enough, not that I was searching the Leeds United hashtag last night, yes I was, that said something that was spot on, and they said, look, like Ipswich and Leicester are doing so well, it's actually an unfair season for teams like Leeds because normally, the form Leeds have been on, I think it's 9 wins in 12 now, 9 wins in 11 before the game. They would probably have like be relatively clear in second or top, but they said, look, it's probably going to be a playoff game. And look, Sunderland are also in those playoffs. We talk about losing players if we don't get there and thereabouts. We're sixth without really hitting the form we maybe hit last year or with the best yet to come. And hopefully a nice new young manager by the name of William coming in soon. Fingers crossed. But last night's game felt like a real playoff game, is what he said. The Leeds fan said, look, that's a playoff game. That's what you're going to get in the playoffs. And it looks like we're going to be in the playoffs. Because if we lose at Ipswich with 13 points behind, then it's too much. And if that's what the playoffs are going to be like, teams like Sunderland are going to be like really good at it. And they've been in the playoffs for the past 2 years, and that's what you're going to get. And I think when you look at Meslier's save, the chances we had, the tactical battle between the managers, it felt like a playoff game. And I think if we're honest, James, we're not going to get automatic promotion ourselves, but the playoffs are very, very much in reach. And that kind of game bodes very well if that is to happen come the end of the season, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. That Meslier save, by the way, was mesmeric. I couldn't believe when I was watching, fair play. He's definitely a Premier League goalkeeper, and that's what Sunderland were up against. It was unbelievable. Honestly, I would go as far as to say that that's one of the best technical saves I've seen from like an opposition goalkeeper at Sunderland since I've been going. Certainly tops anything that we saw in League One. But in terms of the playoff places, Sunderland are sixth. We've beaten West Brom. We've beaten Southampton this season. We've beaten Leeds United this season. We gave Leicester City a good game down their place. Should have had a penalty. That game should have ended 1-1. We were unlucky to lose. Ipswich Town opening day of the season. I really, really rate Ipswich Town highly in terms of the squad building, in terms of how they play. But arguably, Sunderland played quite well and were unlucky to lose that opening day. So the teams in and around Sunderland, we've sort of done well against. We've obviously got that experience now in the squad as well. Everyone's a year older, got more appearances. They've got that experience of coming up through the playoffs in League One, but also the Luton Town game. So I think there's definitely positives to take, but it's such a tight, congested league that I think that Christmas time when the games come thick and fast, I think there's like 4 games before Boxing Day or something like that, something ridiculous. And then you've got the New Year's Day fixture comes into it. And then January's a busy period. And then you come to a certain FA Cup game on the 6th as well. So there's a lot of football to be played. And you can sort of be cut adrift after Christmas when before Christmas you looked in the mix and vice versa. But the Championship's absolutely bananas that if you put a run together, you can make a late charge for the playoff, as Sunderland did last season. Nobody really expected us to get there. But I think it's positive that Sunderland are up there, that the winning games, they're taking points. They just need to, as you say, Graham, work on that consistency and try and win games more regularly and not do the old streakily and lose three on the trot. But even in those losses, I've seen elements of performances which have been good. Obviously, there was a couple towards the back end of Mowbray, which were a hard watch. But by and large, even the games Sunderland have lost this season, there's been a ridiculous refereeing decision, or we just haven't been able to score, which is a problem, widely documented and widely talked about. So, yeah, again, I think Sunderland can do well this season. But at some point, I think they will need to start scoring through strikers. I think that will need to happen at some point if they're going to be successful and achieve their aims this season.
I think, Diallo will get us the goals in the second half of the season, James, but that's just my opinion.
Let's bloody hope so.
Fingers crossed. One thing that is probably testament to how good the performance has been and testament to how good the last two performances have been is Sunderland don't have a manager at the minute. We haven't even discussed it. And we're nearly 30 minutes into a pod. We've got 5 minutes left. James, I'll stay with you on this one, and I'll go to you, Dave. No listeners' questions this week because this was very much impromptu, but really big links towards Will Still. I think it's looking like, when that me and you both know, when this kind of thing gets flushed out to the media en masse, like L'Equipe and the British papers and stuff like that, it's normally been briefed by someone. What that means, who knows? But I think it does look like potentially Kirill does want Will Still. There's a few things to tie off. Hellberg looks like he's out of the equation. Sable, I don't know. I get the feeling he would go with Mike Dodds over Sable because if you're going to go with an inexperienced coach and you can't get your number one target, which appears to be Will Still, but I mean, where do you think we sit at the moment? Asking you as a fan as opposed to a journalist, where do you think we sit at the minute with that, James, in terms of the next management appointment?
I think Mike Dodds has given them a decision to make with his 2 wins. To be honest, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that he could get the job until the end of the season at some point if these talks with Will Still don't go to plan. I think there's a couple of things with this. So it's my understanding that there has been contact and talks. I think that's clear. Obviously, the reports coming out from L'Equipe and obviously in Belgium as well, where obviously Will Still has spent a bit of his life, they would suggest that there's clearly something going on. I think we can take that is pretty certain. What is interesting is that Will Still is doing quite well in France, but he wants transfer assurances from his club at the moment. So there is the possibility that, as everybody does when it comes to taking a new job, especially in football management, that he is looking for a bit of leverage. He might even fancy a new contract. I don't know. That's just a little bit of a hunch. That's not me saying, that I've spoken to Will Still and that's definitely the case. So don't sort of quote me on that in terms of that definitely being Will Still's game. I'm not saying it definitely is or definitely isn't. I'm just saying that it could be a factor. But I think, Sunderland is probably an attractive proposition to Will Still as well. A big club in the Championship getting 40,000 plus every week. The potential for growth is unbelievable. The model will be attractive to him because he's a young coach who likes the recruitment, the analysis, the data, the way Sunderland have gone, the noises that they make. So I think it's very interesting. I think he is the number one target if they are going to appoint a head coach and not go with Mike Dodds. As you say, I don't really see Sable happening. Hellberg as well seems to be off to a different club. So it does look like Sable. It does look to me like Dodds or Still at the moment. I think the other thing to consider would be that Sunderland will have to pay some money to get Will Still out of France. How much that is, I don't know. Will they be able to? Well, not will they be able to? Will they be willing to pay that to get him? What sort of assurances will he want? I don't know. But I think at the moment, we're just at the point of initial contact, some talks penciled in, a few little flirtations. We haven't got to the point yet where we're going back to the evening for afters or anything like that. There's no sort of contract signings. There's no offers. It's still very much up in the air. And I think Mike Dodds will be in charge for the Bristol City game. Almost certainly, even if Will Still was appointed today or tomorrow, I think Mike Dodds would potentially still be in charge for that Bristol City game. But if he wins again, then Sunderland have got a massive decision to make. So it's very interesting. Obviously, when Mowbray was sacked, I think a lot of people assumed that they would have a sort of ready-made thing ready to go, but that hasn't transpired. They've sort of played the field and had a little look around, taken the time. And, thankfully for them, Mike Dodds is bought them that time really by his excellent coaching. Because if Sunderland had lost those 2 games, then people would be livid, to say the least, and rightly so. But they haven't. They've won those 2 games. So Sunderland now have a little bit of a cushion. All is well in the world at the Stadium of Light, really. So we just sort of await with bated breath. But I do think still is the top candidate if they were to appoint a new man. But don't rule Mike Dodds out. Would be my advice. I don't really see it coming from any other avenue. I don't think Paul Heckingbottom happens. Julian Sable, I'm not really too sure. That seems to have quietened down. It was never going to be like a Neil Warnock or a Mick McCarthy, anybody like that. So for me, it's Dodds or Still, and we'll wait and see what happens.
Excellent. Lads, we'll leave it at that. But Dave, Copley, thanks for joining me. I've called you James and Copley through it. I've called you my mate's name and then your official name.
That's fine. I get called far worse on a daily basis, so we'll take that.
We all do, mate. But thanks for joining, lads. Great win. How are the lads?
All the best.
Brilliant.